So I was born and raised outside of Boston, in the south of Boston. I come from a large Irish family. I'm the fourth of 5 kids. Both my parents grew up in Boston, and I lost track of how many first cousins I have that are in the area, but a big family outside of Boston, and it was a large, sort of rambunctious group, but a great one. Well, my mom and dad are high school graduates, and the way that we grew up, I think they're really bright people. They're incredibly hardworking, and I think they realized pretty early on that a path to something different was education. And so that's what we heard from them from the beginning. And what I love about it is, though my parents have grown into great sports fans, they didn't grow up playing a whole lot of sports. And so I think that was a new thing for them to experience with us. But they made it very clear to us from the very beginning that academics and our education was going to take precedent over everything else that we did. Now, as long as we did that, they'd sign us up for any sport or any team they possibly could. And I love it too. There used to be, hanging in our kitchen, back in the day, there used to be this oversized calendar that they would buy, and it was color-coded by kid, by sport. And it was almost like they'd get home from work, and it was like, all right, who's taking which kids to which sport? And they had to coordinate the whole way through. But at the forefront of all that was making sure we kept our studies and our academics exactly where they needed to be. I would say that I was lucky in that the people at Severian Brothers High School, where I went, had a very specific focus on never accepting anything but your best. And they almost didn't care what your best was. It wasn't about the grade. It was whether or not they thought you were giving it everything that you had. And I came in as maybe a little bit of a slacker, and they would push me really hard, and almost just to get them off my back, I started doing better in school. And so I was really lucky. And some of those people had the biggest influence on my life, because at that time, as a 14 to 18-year-old, they set me on a path to Dartmouth. I don't get there without those people. And so when I arrived at Dartmouth, I had that mentality of work, of grind, of doing whatever it could. And look, I didn't, graduate with honors or anything like that, but I had the work ethic and the commitment to it. I knew the doors that it could open because so many people had put me in a space to understand what that could do for me. That I did my very best to stay committed, and luckily had a great experience. I would play just about anything I could get my hands on, and I played football, basketball, and baseball all the way through high school. I had visions of playing both football and baseball at Dartmouth, but realized I needed to choose one of those if I was going to be able to keep my academics in the right place. But I love a bunch of sports. I still play golf. I played tennis for a long time. I enjoy watching just about anything where there's a little bit of competition. I'm all in. I'm a product of the people, that are a part of my family. And I mean that both in the literal sense and those that have been a big part of my life for a long time. Some of those are the friends that I made at Dartmouth, and some of the mentors that I've found afterwards in my professional career. But my family in particular has played such a special role in my life. My parents and the way that they raised us, and their incredible focus on education. My 2 older brothers, who would let me play with them but would not play easily with me, forced me as a young kid to learn toughness and grit and resolve, because I was never going to beat them at those sports. But they're so supportive of this. Any win that we have as an individual is a family win. The response that they've had to this opportunity for me has been tremendous. I fully expect all of them to be season ticket holders here coming soon, so you'll see that. And then, of course, I've been able to add into that mix my beautiful wife, Hillary, who is the strongest person that I know, who believes in me in such a way that it gives me the belief that I can do things I never imagined. I'm so incredibly lucky to have her. And then, of course, we've added Russell to the mix. Russell's about 10 weeks old. And I waited a little bit. I think I got it started a little bit later in life, but he's already changed my perspective, and I can't wait to put him in green and gold. Yeah, the sibling rivalry was strong. I mean, you've got 5 kids that total from start to finish are 10 years apart. And so there was quite a bit of that in the house. I can tell you we had this great side yard where we used the trees as first base, second base, third base. And home plate used to be this beautiful green grass that before we were done with it was nothing but dirt. Same with the pitcher's mound, nothing but dirt. And we were out there every time we could playing wiffle ball. We used to play pickle with the neighborhood kids. I mean, our yard was the spot until the street lights came on. That was a big thing for us. The one that I loved, though, and given where I grew up, snow football was an incredibly important part of what we did. Now, remember, my brothers are 5 and 9 years older than me, and so it's a pretty big age difference when you're talking about young kids. But they let me play, and we used to get out there every time. There were times when it was snowing at night, and around midnight they'd wake me up out of bed and put a big jacket on me and bring me outside. And my mom, to her, her chagrin, one of the end zones was the driveway. And so when you're going up and over the top of your big brothers trying to score a touchdown in the end zone, the first couple times you land, it's okay. But after that, I got pretty banged up doing that. So I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of incredible leaders in my life. But I think, one of the first that really stands out to me was the head football coach at Severian, Charlie Stevenson. It also happens we grew up on the same street, which is pretty exciting. But I remember when I was a sophomore, it was my first time on varsity. And I remember we had back-to-back games, first against a really strong opponent, and then against an opponent that we should have beaten. And I remember the lessons he gave us that week, the first week, was you can never enter a field of play and expect to have success if you overestimate your opponent. They're just kids, they're just like us, they're just trying to win. And we had that mentality all week, and we won that game on Saturday, and it was incredible. And then the next week he had the same approach, but the message was you can't underestimate your opponent. And I just thought that lesson in life was incredible. And I've tried to apply it certainly for football as long as I played, but in many other things as well. And then the second lesson he taught, and I remember this was the first game I played in varsity, or dressed. I didn't play, but the first game that I dressed, we were getting ready in the weight room, which is where we did game days, and he came down and he said something along the lines of, you guys know that I'm a man of few words, but don't be afraid to make mistakes today. Play with abandon, you're ready. And I just remembered that he had prepared the team and we were ready. And getting that message right before you walked out on the field was incredibly powerful. I've never forgotten it. Well, the college decision process for me was pretty brutal. I went to an incredible high school, a place that set me on a path that I'm not sure I ever would have been on without it. And it was a pipeline to places like Boston College to play football. A lot of guys I played with in one way or another ended up in uniform there. Went to some incredible schools. In my senior year in high school, as a quarterback, I broke my hand in the third game of the season, so I missed my senior year. So my grand plans all sort of went by the wayside. And look, to be honest, the first letters I got from Ivy League schools I threw away. I just didn't think that was for me. And I got very lucky that they were persistent and kept coming back. But it was about the coaching staff at Dartmouth and the caliber of those people. In particular, John Lyons and Rob Talley. Roger Hughes was the offensive coordinator at the time. There was something about them as human beings when they sat in my living room that me and my parents were really connected to. It's the first time I ever really felt like I could belong when I talked to those guys. And when I went on the visit and saw the incredible campus, I met the other football players. They were just a little bit different, and they were my kind of different. They were good, solid human beings, and I loved that place, and I'm still incredibly close with a lot of those people today. You have to make some really hard decisions as a young person about how and where you're going to spend your time. There's this sort of philosophy that I've heard throughout the years that there's, if you were to break down your college experience into 3 categories, which is probably an oversimplification of your academics, your athletics, and your social life, you can be great at 2 of those things. It's really hard to be great at all 3. And so you've got to make some pretty tough decisions about how you're going to spend your time and what you're going to be dedicated to. And I think Dartmouth taught me that really well. If you spent just a little bit of time not focused on your academics, you were going to fall behind. So the lessons that I learned there were to keep your priorities in line and make sure you're building your days, your weeks, your month around the things that are most important to you. When it come to my experience there, I'll say we didn't win as many games as I had hoped. But I came to understand the importance of being dedicated to the people in the huddle with you. And no matter what happened, that you were picking each other up, you were fighting for one another. We were in the weight room together at 5:30 in the morning in January in New Hampshire. That's not a fun walk across campus. But when you're doing it with people that you care deeply about and that you want to see succeed, there's something different to it. And so I think from that I learned that the people with whom you're in the huddle trump almost everything else. I mean, some of my greatest memories are on the bus. The Ivy League or football has a rule, you don't fly to games. And so we spent a lot of hours going back and forth to Cornell and back and forth to Penn and Princeton. From New Hampshire, that's a long trip. And those are some of my greatest memories. That's really where you get to know the people around you well. Same thing with our time in the locker room, But if I think back to preseason camp, it was back in the day when we were doing a lot more than they're doing today. And no judgment. That's good progress that the game has made. But those were a couple of weeks of every minute of every day. You're either fighting alongside those guys that are your teammates, or you're walking to and from meals. You're trying to sneak 10 minutes of shut-eye where you can. And we had some incredible games that I can close my eyes and still picture, but the things that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life probably can be summed up in preseason camp. Those are some of the greatest memories of my life. I was very lucky in that I learned an important lesson in high school. And when you're trying to be the starting quarterback and the Hasselbeck brothers are the two guys that are playing in front of you, you learn that you got to kick and fight and scratch to get your chance at some point. So I went to Dartmouth under no illusions that I would start right away. I figured I would have to take a similar approach. And I was really lucky that I got a chance to play as a freshman. I'm the first freshman in Dartmouth history to throw a touchdown pass. I was able to start my sophomore year and played sophomore, junior year. I got hurt junior year. I got a concussion, missed a few games. Another great lesson that I learned was I was pressing so hard. We were struggling a little bit as a football program, and I was trying to take it all on myself to help win, and I struggled. And I ended up missing some playing time as a result of it. And, because of an injury, I had an extra year of eligibility. I came back my 5th year and had a different perspective. That if I took the approach of trying to make everybody around me better as opposed to trying to do it all myself, we could have more success. And luckily we did. When I graduated from Dartmouth, I had a chance to keep playing football. And I knew that I had to take that. I had a tryout, didn't work out. I had a chance to go in the Arena Football League and play. I just knew that if I didn't chase that dream as far as I could take it, there'd be someday where I'd be full of regret. But when that ended, and it was time for me to sort of go out and get a real job, if you want to call it that, the mistake that I made was I chased the wrong things. I chased money, I chased title, I chased perceived prestige. And I was able to achieve some pretty cool things. I felt like I was behind my friends because I had played football and not done what they did. And even though I was able to achieve some great things, what I came to realize pretty quickly is a life without purpose and passion was pretty empty. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. I was pretty unhappy. And I would say that's one of the biggest mistakes I've made. Though I'll tell you, I'm incredibly glad that I made it because it brought me here. And without knowing that, I might not be in a position today to affect so many young people like others did great things for me. Well, first, what I love about this business is that it provides access and opportunity for kids that may not otherwise have that access and opportunity. It's what it did for me. It transformed my life, it changed my future, and it will change the life that my son has as a result. I'm forever grateful for that. And it's why I do what I do. I want to provide those opportunities for other people so that they can find the very best versions of themselves through the lessons learned. When you come to a place like William & Mary, the academic enterprise has a well-established reputation, and you're going to have to focus on your studies incredibly well. But there's also going to be some lessons you're going to learn on the field, on the court, or in the pool that are going to teach you resilience and grit and toughness, problem solving, teamwork, relentless commitment to a long-term goal. I mean, all of those things are amazing, and that's why I want to do what I do for a living. Anytime I talk to high school or college kids, the most important thing I've learned is when you get a job, when you get an opportunity, put your head down and work as hard as you can to be great at the thing you're asked to do. Other opportunities will come, chances to grow and expand. You have to advocate for yourself, of course, but the most important thing you can do is be great at the thing you're asked to do every day. I try to make that a hallmark of the way that I work with people, to consistently show up every day and try to do a great job at the thing you're asked to do. That's been the best lesson that I've learned, and I think that's what football is all about. You play once a week, and you've got to show up at practice and consistently be great at the thing you're asked to do. And you've got to rely on the people around you to be consistently great at the thing they do in order to have success. I learned that lesson then. I've tried to carry it with me throughout my life. Yeah, so when I made the decision to transition into college athletics, I'm incredibly lucky that some people back at Dartmouth took a chance on me and gave me a job there. Now, I had been in sales, and so one of the opportunities that was available was the director of football operations. And that job was set up where it was about 50% team operations and 50% a new fundraising program to try to create better support for football. And I thought, since I was in sales, there's probably some correlation to fundraising. I knew football, I loved football. At that point, I was still trying to decide if I wanted to coach or be an administrator. So I thought it was a really great way to get back in the business. And so I did that, and we had a lot of success raising money for the football program, and they've gone on to do some incredible things since then. But that spilled into a chance to try to raise money for about half of our sports and our club sports at Dartmouth. I had a chance to be a major gifts officer for a while, to go out and secure some of those endowment gifts and facilities thing, and I did that for campus in addition to the work I had done for athletics. And then from there, I had a chance to go down to Rice University. And I loved Dartmouth, but it was all I had ever known, and I wanted to experience a different place. I wanted to experience scholarship level, which Rice was and still is. But it was also a chance for me to try to find a path that was more than just the only place I had ever known. And so I went down there and I continued on a development track. I was lucky enough to later take over our role as the liaison to the admissions office. So every student athlete who went to the admissions office came through my desk, and I would advocate on their behalf. And then I had an opportunity to be the sport administrator for men's basketball there, which was incredible. That was my first experience doing that. And then I had a chance to work at Cal up at UC Berkeley. And I thought it was a great opportunity for me to try the Power 5 level, obviously with an incredible academic reputation, just as Dartmouth and just as Rice have. And it was a chance to be near some family. I have an older brother who's out in the area. And my girlfriend at the time and I decided to take a risk and have an adventure. Luckily, she agreed to marry me a little bit later, and now we've got a little one. But that experience opened my eyes to the importance of the mission of a public institution. I've loved my time at Cal. It's given me incredible experiences. I'm the sport administrator for men's basketball there too. And I really feel like that set me on a trajectory to put me in this chair today. I like to think about it in terms of a puzzle. And this is one of the things that I talk about when people ask me, that if you're trying to find professional fulfillment and satisfaction, you've got to figure out what's the right kind of puzzle you want to solve. And for me, what I love about being a college athletics administrator is the puzzle is, here are primarily the pieces you have. How do you set them up in a way to have as much success across as many programs as possible? How do you strategically invest a little bit in different areas every way to try to provide the greatest experiences you can to student athletes? I love that. And though I love football and everything about it, I played a bunch of sports growing up. My siblings played a bunch of sports growing up. And I love the values and the life lessons that athletics teach. And though I was drawn to football, and that's where I spent my time, and that's what provided my access and opportunities, those lessons can be learned in a whole bunch of sports. And that's why I love supporting as many of them as possible. An investment in William & Mary Athletics is an investment in some of the best and brightest young people in our country. They're going to come to a place like this, and they're going to look to us to help them grow into the very best versions of themselves. They've made a commitment to us. We owe a similar commitment to them to make sure that when they leave, they're able to go on and change the world.